In this video, I'm gonna cover the tool that every creator should have, 3D printers.
Yeah, you won't step to me with weaponry, expect to be respecting me. Your flesh will see the best of me, I'm stressing while you're testing me. Let you see my destiny, dead when feds arresting me. Go get your heat and check the streets and the rebels next to me. You won't step to me with weaponry, expect to be respecting me. Your flesh will see the best of me, I'm stressing while you're testing me. Let you see my destiny, dead when feds arresting me. Go get your heat and check the streets and the rebels next to me. You assume that I'm dipping or going ghost like my namesake. I don't look like I'm heated cause no one knows in my game face. It's shown in the same place, I'm leading everybody. You leaving, you ain't bleeding, you're barely bloody. Care to study my tactics, cut like kitchen gashes. I'll rip on you so much, I'll give you surgeon stitch in practice. Heard of spinning axes, my DJ's with his needle now. Tracks are paving ways, like freeways for the people now. See ways that can keep us down, ain't no show, no need a clown. Like Arizona summers, can they keep the heat around? You see the ground, see the sky, see the truth, see the lies, keep it true, see who dies.
So I bought my first 3D printer back in 2019, and it was okay. It wasn't great. Back then, the printers were tinkerer toys, you know? You had fun with them, you printed some stuff, and then it broke, you fixed it, and you started the process all over again. Well, things have come a long way when it comes to 3D printing, and now you have entire print farms all over the world that just churn out flawless print after flawless print. And that's great because a ton of people can get into this hobby without actually having to master the mechanics of what a 3D printer is. So I have gone through a lot of different printers to get to the point that I am now, and I've tested a lot of different stuff. And by no means am I the most well-versed person within the 3D printing space, but you can rest assured that I am not being paid to give you my opinion here. All of these printers were purchased by me. None of the brands that I've used for 3D printing have sponsored the channel. So in a world of online influencers telling you which brand to buy, all while accepting kickbacks from the companies that they're advertising for, hopefully you can take some of the things that I tell you in this video and actually trust that they are a real experience that someone had. But I do want to acknowledge that my experiences are not necessarily the same experiences of every other person out there with every brand that I've tried. So as with anything, take my advice, mix it up with a lot of other advice, and do what makes the most sense for you. My first printer in 2019, as mentioned, I got a big format printer. My mindset at that time was I want to be able to print entire headlight bezels, the entire thing for a headlight. I want to model it, I want to design it, I want to print it out, and I wanted a big format printer to do that. So I got the Creality CR10 Max, and that thing at the time had I believe it was 450 cubed bed size. It was huge, it was a big printer. But I quickly began to realize just how very unlikely it was that I was ever going to actually be able to create a bezel and print it out, especially on that printer. It's quite involved. Thankfully, the tech has advanced enough that I'd like to revisit that concept, but I will say back in 2019, it was a very ambitious thought that unfortunately a beginner to the 3D printing world was not prepared to do. I printed a few fun things on it. I did design some stuff like some Hellahorn covers that I put on my show car, along with a few other little odds and ends that I printed over the course of about a year until the heat bed decided to stop working. And I did have some other little issues in there in between that just started creating issues. Bed leveling was a nightmare, even though it had an automatic bed leveler, BL Touch. But you know, those are machines of the past. Thank God we're not stuck with them anymore. But I did end up moving on to a little bit of a nicer machine. Now at the time, multicolor printing was a little bit uncommon. I think Bambu had just kind of entered the scene at the point that I got my second printer. And so I wasn't quite ready to drop that kind of money on a printer like Bambu. And they were not the company they are today. They were more of the one that everybody was talking about, but not quite established. So I actually went with a FlashForge Creator Pro 2. Now this one was really cool because it had two print heads and it could print using the one and then dock it and then pull the other one in print. And I got some really cool stuff. Probably one of the coolest things that I did on that printer was actually two-color TPU prints. Now TPU is a material that is very rubberized and flexible, and it can be really nice for like keychains. It's also very, very durable, so you can create things with it that might see a lot of flexing, but it will actually hold up really well. People print balls that bounce. People print shoes and actually wear them on the street with TPU. TPU is a really cool filament, but an issue with it is because it is so flexible, it does not typically work on machines that have multi-material systems that feed through to one nozzle. And that is a limitation to most of those. And surprisingly, this FlashForge machine that I had way back when, it could do it pretty well because of the way the system worked. You had the two rolls, they fed directly into their own nozzles, and it could just switch between the nozzles whenever it needed to, lay down the filament, and it worked. Now, there were some other issues with the machine. The bed adhesion was not great. The bed print size was rather tight and small. Didn't give me a lot of room to print things with it. And the consistency just wasn't there. It was definitely a step up from the Creality printer that I was using for quite a while, but it still just wasn't reliable enough that I could hop on, press start, walk away and know it was going to be good to go. So I kept it, you know, and the Creality printer ended up in a corner somewhere. It never got used. It was mainly the FlashForge, but I just never got confident enough that I could start using it on a regular basis. Plus the smaller bed really did limit me in what I could do. So the FlashForge was interesting. You know, it got me into a little bit more reliable FDM prints and that multicolor. But then I wanted a little bit more detail, so I stepped up into resin printing. Now, resin printing is a very different animal. It is still 3D printing, but you're doing it using a resin material that is activated with UV light. So it's got a screen. They're typically 4K, even 6K and 8K. I think they've even got 10K and more out now. But I had a 4K screen on the one that I was using, and it was very detailed. I could get some really, really nice prints out of that. But there were some downsides to that as well. It's rather fragile. So it's really good for like minifigs and things like that, but the sun can warp it. Now there are different kinds of resins that you can get that might work better than others, but in my experience, I tried Sriracha and a whole bunch of other ones that were designed to do better, and I didn't have great results with that. So the resin printing was okay. At that time, I had an Elegoo Saturn, I believe, and then I also ended up getting a FlashForge, I believe it was a 9.25 that I was using, and both were really cool in what I could create and the detail behind it, but they were messy, they're expensive to print with, and once again, that bed size being very small. You also cannot do anything multi-material, and in the end, for the purposes of what I was doing, unfortunately, the prints were rather brittle and fragile, and it just didn't hold up long term. And that's when someone recommended to me to try out Creality's newest printers, the Creality K1C. Now, that video I did a couple years ago when I got that printer, and it was really good out of the box. The thing that really surprised me was just the amount of detail that it could do and how fast it could do it. And it did a great job for the first 300 hours or so. It printed fantastic. But right around when I got to 300 hours, I started having issues with bed adhesion. I started having issues with reliability of the prints overall, and it just started to get frustrating to even use the thing because I didn't know one day to the next if it was going to put out a good print. Now keep in mind, I have never been the guy that knows these printers inside and out. I'm not the kind of guy that knows, oh, well, you're having this, you need to change out this part, you need to change out that part. And a lot of people, probably a lot of people that are gonna be watching this video, know exactly what to look for. And they can take all these printers that I had issues with, spend an hour or less, and have them printing perfectly fine again. But that's not me, and I would imagine most people watching this video, if you're thinking about getting a 3D printer, that's probably not you either. There is a lot of support out there and there's a lot of stuff, but I've just been of the mindset that I just want my tools to work. I've heard it best described as, I want my hobby to be 3D printing. I don't want my hobby to be working on 3D printers. And after I had those issues with the K1C, I just decided, you know what? I need to just do it and spend the money on a Bambu printer. And in the end, I was debating on the P1P, P1S, but after doing a lot of research, I just said, look, I need to try a good printer and see how it goes. I'm going with X1C. So I bought the X1 Carbon about 18 months ago, so it would have been about maybe 6 months after I got the K1C, and wow, I was in love. It worked. It was a printer that just worked, and it was literally what I was looking for, and it just always printed. I went to it, I said print, it printed, it never had a problem. I've changed out maybe 3 or 4 nozzles in the 3,500 hours I've owned it, and it just printed, and it was just an amazing experience. I still had the K1C from Creality, but it didn't really get used much anymore. I still had the FlashForge, but it never got used. And I still had both resin printers, and they really didn't get used. The Bambu was the printer that I went to for everything. So I ended up buying a few more printers over the years just to kind of see and compare, because my mindset was, and based on other people I talked to, was that Bambu had figured it out and other companies were seeing how they did it and mimicking it. So I bought a couple other printers. I did end up getting another Bambu. I got an A1 Mini, and it was really honestly just because it was so darn cheap with the combo set when I got it. I think it was like 350 bucks. So it was kind of like, let's get another Bambu. Let's see how it goes on the bottom line, cheapest printer that they sell. And once again, that printer was fantastic. The bed was really small. It couldn't print ABS. It couldn't do a lot of like fancy materials like some of the carbon fiber stuff, but PETG, PLA, and TPU, it could do all day long, no problems. Now, keeping in mind with TPU, you do have to manually load the material in. You can't use an AMS system for that, but it would print it, no problem. I ended up over the course of the last year, I think starting the end of 24, beginning of 25, I started buying a few other printers because there was a lot of companies that were bringing out some really cool printers that on the outside, based on reviews that I saw by a lot of influencers who were being paid for their reviews, it seemed like these companies were producing quality products. So the first one that I got was the Elegoo Centauri Carbon. And I'll say that printer, when it came in, was fantastic. Now, when they released it, they did not have a multi-material system at that time, and multi-material systems are a pretty big deal because it gives you the ability to load up multiple materials into a machine and resume. So let's say I'm printing a large print of some sort and I've only got a small spool, or maybe I got a full spool and it's just so big it requires 2 full rolls of filament. I can have one in bank 1, put another one in bank 2, and when bank 1 runs out in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping, it automatically loads in bank 2 and starts printing again. After getting the Bambu X1 Carbon, I just decided that that was something that I really wanted to see in a printer. And Elegoo had said that the Centauri Carbon was going to get that system. So I went ahead and got the printer and I rocked it for a while and I loved it, waiting for the day that they dropped that system. I loved it so much I bought 2. I ended up buying a second one, having to wait for it to come in, and both of them worked fantastic. But the issue came here very recently where they came out and said they're not actually going to be able to create a multi-material system for that printer. Didn't really give a lot of reasons why, but it made it to the point where I'm very limited on space, and do I really want to keep a printer on hand that can't fully do everything that I want it to do? As well as it could print, it just didn't feel the same when I have to manually load in the filament every time. So take that for what it's worth. I will say that for a $300 printer, it is fantastic, but there may never come a day where you're able to print multicolor prints or have that automated loading system that resumes on the next roll when it runs out. Another printer that I bought during this time period was the Anycubic S1 Kobra, and that was another one that did really well. Now, it came with the AMS system included. They called it the Ace Pro, and it was very affordable. It worked pretty well, and as long as you stuck with PLA or even PETG, it did a really good job. But I found when I went to ABS or anything a little bit more technical of a filament, I started to have some issues with it. The Ace system was not great. Occasionally you would have an issue where it would struggle to unload and load filaments. Now, you have to remember, these systems will change filament on a multicolor print thousands of times. So even if it's 1 in 1,000, well, at some point during that print, it's going to have a problem. It's going to send an error. And in some cases, it would abort the entire print, basically making me have a chunk of plastic plastic that I had to throw away. And while this printer was still better than many of the ones that I started out with, it just didn't live up to my expectations of things that I was getting from printers like Bambu. But it did do really well with the PLA prints, so I kept it around for a while. I did end up even getting a second Ace Pro system. That way I could load up to 8 different colors or 8 rolls of filament into the system, and it could switch between all of them. But the more and more time went on, I still found myself going to either the Centauri, if it was a single color print, or the Bambu, if it was a multicolor print, because I knew those two, as long as you understood that one is a single color, the other one's multi, they both would just print, and they both just did a good job. Layer adhesion was great. So those are the printers that I went to. Now there is another printer in there that I had during this time period. Creality came to the plate hard with the K2 Plus, and they ended up running a sale that made it really hard not to go ahead and give it a try. Even though I've been burned by Creality now twice, I went back for a third run with Creality and I got the K2 Plus. Well, the K2 Plus gave me a lot of problems too, and all of them were things that I could fix, but it just got back to that point where when you're printing and then the ABS system is clogging the nozzle because of God knows what problem this time, and now I've got to try to mid-print clear out the nozzle and get the print started again just to have a layer shift in the whole process. It really makes it difficult to want to keep that printer when you know you have another printer that can do it without any problems, that's got thousands of hours on it. So as much as that printer did well, as much as the S1 did well, and as much as the Centauri Carbons did well, I got rid of all of them. It just came down to the realization that there were more reliable options out there, and given my limited space, I just didn't see the benefit in keeping printers that weren't quite on the level of other printers that I could get. And that's where we end up where I am today. I've got my X1 Carbon over here. This is the same one that I bought over 18 months ago. I don't know, we're coming up on 2 years now, and it has been a phenomenal printer. And it's got over 3,500 hours on it. I've never come even close to this many hours on a printer, but there you go, 3,500 hours on one printer. I've got 2 P1S printers. And last up, I have the H2D. Now, this one's really cool because it is dual headed. That means that there's one print head, but 2 nozzles on the head itself, so it can change between filaments without having extra waste. So the way that Bambu creates this multicolor system is by using these AMS systems here. Now I have 2 AMS and 2 AMS 2 Pros. The 2 Pros are a little bit faster and they can dry out your filament if you do have issues where it's really humid where you live or where you're working or where you're storing these printers. That can come in handy, but in my case, I don't even have them plugged up for the dryers. I generally don't have too much of an issue, especially with Bambu machines. But I do have 1 AMS system for each of the 4 printers, and I do have this single AMS HT system that I use for the second nozzle on the H2D. Now the way these systems work with the single nozzle, they use one nozzle, they feed filament in, and they start printing a layer on your print. Now, in the event that it's a multicolor print, at some point during that layer, when it finishes with one color, it will stop, park the head, remove the filament from it, put new filament in, and then it has to purge the nozzle. And this process of purging creates something we call poop. Now, the poop is effectively a mixture of the 2 colors as it's clearing the nozzle of the old filament that it was in there. If you don't do that, then you get bleed through where it's a mixture of the 2 filaments and then your colors aren't right. So it is pretty important to purge the system out, but where the H2D really shines is that it is able to use 2 separate nozzles. There's no need to clean one out or the other if you're doing a 2-color print. Now, if you're doing more than 2 colors, then it will have to clear out one of the nozzles to do that 3rd, 4th, and 5th color, or however many that you're running. In the case of this one here, it can actually have many AMS systems loading many different filaments. I can't even remember off the top of my head. I think it's like 38 different filaments. It's stupid how many filaments you can have preloaded and ready to go and do a crazy number of color changes on a print. But what Bambu has released recently is the H2C. Now, the H2C is one step up from this. The bed size is slightly smaller, but it does have the Vortex nozzle system, and basically it can change out its nozzles on the fly, thus creating much less waste and a much faster change time for your colors, so less purge. For me and the majority of the stuff that I'm printing, I just don't need that many color changes. The H2D with dual nozzles works out very well, and the single head printing options also work out really, really well for my needs. So I love the H2D. I have the large format bed, so I can put a lot more on it. I can print a lot more stuff, and it does have less waste than some of my other systems. But the other systems are just as reliable at printing prints as the H2D. So when it really comes down to it, you can't go wrong with a Bambu printer. If you're like me and you're in the creator space and you're trying to expand your options of what you can do, Bambu is the way to go. I honestly wouldn't go any other direction after the experiences that I've had and the things that I've done. Now, that doesn't mean that that's gonna be the same situation for you. You might get another printer and love it and use the heck out of it. But my own experience, Bambu is the only way I'm gonna go, and I don't think that's ever gonna change for me. I've been down the road of other printers, I've tried resin, I've tried other stuff, and the Bambus just keep working. So that comes down to the question of which Bambu printer is right for you. Now, there's a few different things that you want to keep in mind when you're deciding which printer to go with, and one of the big ones is material. What material do you plan to print with? Well, ABS is going to be the best overall material for automotive use. There are some other ones like ASA, fiberglass infused stuff, polycarbonates, and a whole bunch of different options when it comes to that, but I would say overall ABS is my go-to. It's affordable. It has a ton of color selections out there. I am a big fan of the Bambu filament. I stick with it. They have created a really good ecosystem. If you stay within the ecosystem, in my opinion and in my experience, you're gonna have less problems than if you try to get stuff on Amazon for cheaper. Generally, when you catch a sale through Bambu, you can get a roll of ABS as low as like 10 bucks, assuming that you buy them in bulk, and their normal pricing seems to be around $15 a roll if you buy them in bulk throughout the year. So it's easy enough to buy a bunch of it, have it on hand, and when they run a sale, grab a lot more, have it on hand, and just ready to go whenever you need it. It's priced right around the price point of PLA, but just keep in mind that PLA has the most options when it comes to prints and the things that you can do. You have silk PLA, you have matte PLAs, you have gloss PLAs. There's just so many different glow-in-the-dark PLAs, tons of PLAs. PLA is gonna be your indoor stuff. If it's not gonna get a lot of heat, it's not gonna see any chemicals. Overall, it's just gonna sit on a shelf in your house. PLA is great. PLA is easy to work with. PLA is easy to use. But if you're using it for automotive uses or anything that's high temperature or might come into contact with different chemicals, ABS is really good for that. Once again, you do have a lot of other filaments, and there's plenty of videos that go into more detail on those filaments, but I primarily use ABS and PLA for anything that I print. Now, if you're doing PLA, the A1 is gonna be perfectly fine. The A1 Mini, smaller bed size, but it'll be perfectly fine. If you're doing ABS, you want an enclosed printer. So from Bambu, currently, the only options they have is the P2S, which is a upgrade from these units. They do have the color screens on them, as well as quite a few different upgrades inside of the printer that make it work even better than these. I don't have one myself, and I haven't tried one myself, but I've watched a lot of videos and seen some of the upgrades, and from what I can tell, they're definitely worth checking out. So the P2S is gonna be your entry-level enclosed printer from Bambu as of this video. There is rumor that they're gonna bring back the X2 Carbon. That's not official yet. They have not announced that, but it does look like there might be an X2 on the horizon. The X1 has been phased out, and the P1S has been phased out, unfortunately. So great printers from a great brand, and I'm pretty confident you buy anything from Bambu, you're gonna be happy as long as you understand the limitations of the materials that you get. Now, beyond that, you do have the H2 lineup. The H2S and the H2D both have the larger bed. The H2S is a single nozzle and the H2D has that dual nozzle. If you step up to the H2C, you're gonna get that vortex system, but a slightly smaller bed. I have the H2D, I love the H2D and it's great. The H2S, you can kind of think of it like an X1 Carbon with a larger bed size, but single nozzle. It does not have that dual nozzle system. And I am simplifying the differences here. There is absolutely a ton of tech within these printers that set them apart from another one, but ultimately for me, it's just, does it do its job? And that's just what I've loved about Bambu. All four of these printers can print reliably. The only real differences that I've found between them is that these will waste a little bit more and this one can print just a little bit faster. But in general, if you're not in a time crunch and you're not running a big farm, you're gonna be perfectly happy with a P1S, a P2S, an X1 Carbon, X2 if it ever drops. You're gonna be perfectly happy with those printers. If you don't need the ABS, you're gonna be very happy with an A1. You don't even have to get the multi-material systems. Maybe you wanna get that later on, and for now, you just wanna do single color printing. You can do that. You can upgrade to the multi-material systems later on. There's a lot of options, and in my opinion, if you stick within the Bambu lineup, you're not gonna be upset, and you're gonna get really good results. So there it is. I tried to keep it somewhat short, but somewhat informative. There's so much to 3D printing and everything that's out there, and I've been led down so many roads to look at printers that everybody swore was great. Influencers all over the place were coming together and swearing a printer was great, and just to be let down by that printer in real life. And that's the point of this video. If you're thinking about 3D printing, if you're thinking about getting into it, and you're anything like me, I would rather spend a little bit more on something good than save a few bucks on something not quite as good. I just want my printers to work, and in the case of the Bambus, they do. So take my experience with it, and hopefully it will help you guys make a better decision on what printers to get. I love the Bambus. Check them out. See what models they got available right now. It changes. They're moving up to the 2 series on everything. The P2, they're probably gonna have the A2. The X2s seem like they're coming, and you got the H2s already here. So seems like they're going with the 2 across the lineup. So any of the P1, X1s, and A1s are probably gonna start getting phased out in preparation for the 2 series of those printers. But it's from Bambu, quite honestly, go with it. It's gonna be a good printer. Something I have been wanting to get into, and I will be getting into in some future videos, is 3D scanning. And I did start out with a Einstar from Shining 3D, and this is their original Einstar. It was on sale. I figured it was a good opportunity to get into the 3D scanning space, learn a little bit more about it before I end up buying a more expensive model. Now these scanners can be pretty expensive, even on the sale, just over $600 for this one, but 3D scanning is kind of taking it to that next level. If you want to start creating things, maybe you want to scan a headlight bezel and design an insert for it, that's where you're going to really want a 3D scanner to be able to do that kind of stuff. But obviously the first step is going to be to get yourself a 3D printer. So hopefully this video will help get you in that direction. If you have not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future videos that we do where we're going to get into the 3D scanning. And I do actually have some plans to design something for a bezel on a car, just to give you guys an idea of how that process will go. And I'm still learning that process. I just got this scanner and I've been scanning some stuff and playing around, and then I've got to get into 3D design and pull it into software, and I'm going to figure that all out. And my plan is to give you guys a crash course on that kind of stuff. So make sure you follow the channel so you don't miss any videos like that in the future.